Be thankful I didn't make you watch. What is it? The Little Mermaid? Is that the name of that movie?
The new one?
No, the classic. Is it The Little Mermaid? Is that what it's called?
There is such a thing. I don't know.
Like she sings and okay.
That's it. You got it. The Little Mermaid.
Part of your world.
Half fish, half little girl.
So in that, there's a neat thing where, is it Ariel? I think is her. I'm not playing dumb. It's not like I know this anyway.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, Adam.
So I'm just double checking now. Nobody got assassinated that we're aware of in this last week.
Not that we're aware of.
And nobody said anything absolutely explosive that we absolutely have to comment on this week on some podcast?
No, I think that we, at long last, are able to continue our mini-series.
I'm very excited. I cannot wait to dive in to our literary analysis on these here Bob and Adam crossover shows. But first, I understand we have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of.
Yes, we posted our prior episode. We got some interesting feedback, and we have some video evidence that needs to be admitted into court.
Evidence? Court?
Yes.
This sounds serious. Well,
Yep.
let's...
There have been accusations leveled against one of the hosts of this here podcast, and it's not me.
Oh, no. Well, hold on. Let me process elimination. Oh, dear. All right, well, let's see this video evidence, and we'll just see how well it stacks up. Yeah, and one more excellent thing he just drops in as a little nugget is the whole history of where we got government schooling from.
Right, yeah.
School from the Second Reich, the Prussian government, where they were trying to figure out a way to get these conscripts to actually pick up the rifle and point it in the right direction and not run away. What do? You institute this military-style education system for the kids that brainwashes them into worshiping the Kaiser.
Get them when they're young. Yep.
Get them when they're young. And like we're still doing that in 2025 with these weird German words like school and kindergarten. We shouldn't be saying words like that unless we're turning into Prussians. First of all, of those two guys, one of them was wearing a different shirt.
Yeah, I know. I realized.
And that guy, I don't know, it seemed like he was making some pretty hilarious and smart points. What's the problem, Bob?
So what happened, just to explain why Adam said that, was Dave Smith, who we were playing, one of the tangents he went on in his own episode is he said, oh, I watched this thing from the guys who made the School Sucks podcast, Brett, is it Benoit?
Something like that.
Yeah. And I've had him on my show, good guy. Tom and I had him as a guest on our cruise at one point. And he had a video where he was talking about how, and this is all completely accurate, that Horace Mann imported the Prussian model of schooling in terms of the standard, what we think of as the public school. And that, the point clearly in Prussia was not to bestow the benefits of a liberal arts education on all the children, because some of them, oh man, their parents can't afford to send them to school. No, it was clearly to instill obedience and conformity to the dictates of the state and so forth. And so it's kind of a telephone game, but Adam, you absorbed this notion that the word school itself was a German word, and that the fact that we're just even calling that thing school just shows that we got it, from the proto-Nazis. And so somebody, said, hey, I liked your episode, guys, except for this, bogus etymology of the word school, which comes from the Latin. And so first, Adam, you and I went and looked, and then I thought, here's the clincher. Does Shakespeare ever use the word school in that sense? And apparently in Midsummer Night's Dream, Helena in Act 3, Scene 2 says, oh, when she's angry, she's keen and shrewd. She was a vixen when she went to school, and though she be but little, she is fierce. All right, so presumably Shakespeare was not anticipating the rise of Prussia. And so I think clearly there's an issue here, and that you did, in fact, mislead our viewers.
I take your point. I was about ready to do a pitched battle with you, but you brought out the big guns, old Willie Shakespeare, so what am I going to say? Okay. But the accent was funny, and I stand by my delivery, if not the content of my message.
I will grant you, by you putting the emphasis on there, it'd be sort of like, and why do we even talk this Einstein, like this relativity is clearly like a Nazi pseudoscience, but
That's a funny YouTube channel in the making right there. We'll just destroy everything that could be pronounced Hitlerian and Germanic. Tear it all down. He does not equal imp she squared.
So I think, as part of your atonement, that you really should just apologize. For what
Apologize me to you?
Apologize.
All right. I apologize.
You're really sorry.
I'm really sorry. I apologize unreservedly.
You take it back?
I do. I offer a complete and utter retraction. The imputation was totally without basis in fact and was in no way fair comment and was motivated purely by malice. And I deeply regret any distress that my comments may have caused you or your family, and I hereby undertake not to repeat any such slander anytime in the future.
Okay. So what are we talking about today?
Well, first of all, we're talking about just how much range you can see in a field when you just have two data points. We're going to analyze literature, and I come with Batman. It's a comic book. And then you come with one GK Chesterton, who wrote a fine little novel in 1908 called The Man Who Was Thursday. And so that's a big gap between genres and style, and I'm all about it.
Yep. As we say, just to let people know who may have missed the earlier one, part of what Adam and I are doing here is when there's not breaking news that commands our attention, we are engaging in a book club, as it were, and we give each other assignments. And so last time Adam picked the what is it, a graphic novel? Is that how you would describe it?
If you're trying not to get made fun of and anybody give you a wedgie, you say graphic novel, yeah.
Comic book for grown-ups with like bad words but no nudity. That graphic violence. The Dark Knight Returns about Batman, and then it was my turn, and I racked my brains, and I thought, okay, a good starting point would be G.K. Chesterton's The Man Who Was Thursday, among other reasons. Like, one thing, it's a Penguin classic, so it should be good. I didn't feel too sheepish in nominating this one, but also it talks about anarchy, so I thought this is a pretty good, gateway drug into maybe some more esoteric things that we might cover down the road. So that was the basis for this little backstory. So I read this in undergrad. I don't even know how it got on my radar, and I remember at the time, like and we'll get into this, but there's an area of my theology now that the go-to thing that I rely on is I remembered that concept was not unlocked for me fully until I read this particular book. And so that's why it always had a place in my heart. And so I wanted to read it again. And so I thought this is a good time. Should we say at this point, I don't see how we avoid serious spoilers in discussing this. So so I liked it. I mean, you didn't regret reading it, right? Is that true?
I enjoyed it quite a bit. And
Okay.
much like with The Dark Knight, we are going to spoil the poop out of this.
Yeah.
So if that bothers you, and it might, maybe pause, read it first. I don't know.
That's what I was going to say. That like I recommended it, so I was like, but it's not like you're like, geez, Bob, would you pick this one for? So, given that we both liked it and think it's worth reading, we would say to people, yes, go ahead and read this thing, and I don't think you're going to regret it. But if you listen to us right now, we are going to spoil it. So
for sure. In fact, you admonished me not to read the back cover, read any blurbs, read any reviews. I think you even said don't bother with the footnotes, and that was good advice. I could sort of see what was going on, but it did take a few pages, and the surprises around each corner were well worth it. I was glad I went in blind, as it were.
Can I, before we dive into this, let me just give a little bit so people have a sense. So G.K. Chesterton Is it the Father Brown series? I think that's
Yeah.
what it's called. So
Correct.
you may have, I think they even made like a TV show about it or something, didn't they? Or they had like little TV made for TV movies.
I wouldn't
or
be
something?
surprised, but I never saw that.
Okay, so anyway, so that if you're familiar with that, he's the author of those. He also wrote the book Orthodoxy, which, if you're into Christian apologetics, is excellent. It was in there. I was going to look up the exact quote. It's very pithy, but I'm almost positive that's where I got the notion, Adam, where he says something like, again, this is a poor paraphrase because he has such a turn of phrase, but it was something like, and these skeptics will survey, and point out that all the world's religions have some memory of an ancient flood and use that as evidence that it must not have occurred. He says something like that, and it was just kind of funny, like whether you believe it or not. Like that is you know what I mean? Like that's just an interesting observation. And then also there's this notion of what's called Chesterton's fence that comes from, I don't know where he wrote that up, but it's more eloquent the way he says it, but just the gist of it is, and it's a fascinating idea. He said, like there's two types of people in the world when it comes to reforming society or your views towards conventions. And he said one type of man will see a fence and say, hey, this fence is here, let's take it down. And somebody else will say to him, well, why should we? Like, what purpose does it serve? He says, I have no idea. That's why we should take it down. And then the other person will say, well, no, before you take this fence down, why don't you go sit and think for a bit, come up with what you think is a plausible reason for why someone built this fence in the first place. And only then, when you can come up with a reason as why did anyone build it, can we think about maybe we should take it down now. But until that point, no, we're absolutely not taking it down. And so, in terms of like listening to socialists talk about stupid profit motive, let's get rid of that. And we're listening to MMTers talk about stuff. And I was just like, do you guys even know what function accounting serves? Like, maybe we should get rid of accounting and just run the printing bread. But let's first like understand why we have accounting in the first place.
It's a great concept, and it works on the small level and the large. And as you just alluded, it's the difference in mindset between a progressive and a conservative.
Yeah.
Or somebody who just reflexively wants to burn everything down because they have some beef, and a wiser person who comes along and sees the fence and says, yeah, before you even think about tearing that fence down, you should be positive why it was built in the first place. And that doesn't mean that all fences, should never be torn down or anything like that, but it's an admonition to caution, and you should have a reflexive bias towards tradition rather than whatever your nephew coming back from college thinks the society ought to be transformed into next week.
Speaking of weeks and days of them, what did you? So I guess maybe to open it is the floor is yours. Like, what did you think about this? How do you want to proceed?
I've been thinking about that ever since I finished reading it. I could take a shot at it, but do you want to just go over the plot?
Sure. So, meaning, do you want me to?
If you wanted to punt, I'd take a shot at it. But
go ahead. Why don't you do it?
Okay. This is, would you call it Edwardian England?
I think so.
So that's the setting. And you have one self-described poet in an intellectual circle pontificating about anarchy. And you have another self-described poet who comes in talking about how real poetry is found in order, which is a point I'm going to come back to. Anyway, these are the two protagonists, basically. Anarchy guys named Gregory, and the rule of law order guys named Syme. And they get in an argument about anarchy, and Syme says to Gregory, you're not a real anarchist, and he says, I sure am. And he swears him to secrecy and takes him to a secret anarchist meeting. And then right before the meeting is about to start, Gregory tells Syme that what's going to happen here is this is our district of anarchists, and we're going to elect someone to come from our district and represent ourselves on the board of Europe-wide anarchists. And our representative has a code name. It's Thursday. That's what the title means. And then Syme at that point says, "Wow, I have a secret for you. Turns out I'm a policeman, specifically sent here to get rid of anarchists." And they swear each other to secrecy. I'll leave the reader to discover why. And then because a policeman's in their midst, when Gregory comes to give a speech to try and get elected to be Thursday, he sort of waters down his message to show the policemen in their midst that anarchists are really kind of lovey-dovey. It's no big deal. At which point, Syme stands up and also puts his hat in the ring for the position and argues the most fierce, violent, society destructive speech of anarchy you can imagine, and ends up getting elected. So now this policeman
he was the man who was Thursday. Yeah.
Right. So he becomes Thursday. And then the rest of the novel is about how this policeman comes to sit on this board of anarchists, and then things start to get weird. I guess I'll just give the whole game away. There's a game of cat and mouse happening here where the policeman doesn't want to be discovered that he's that he's a policeman by the anarchists, and they're all terrified of the leader, Sunday.
Yes, they're all. I mean, it might have been obvious, but they're all named after days of the week. That's
Days
their
of the
code
week,
names.
exactly. And then hilariously, in very bizarre chase scenes and battles all across England and France at one point, it becomes clear one by one that each member of this anarchist board is also a policeman who has infiltrated the board. And then things get really weird, and I'm just not sure how to describe it, Bob.
Yeah. And they're not just like bobbies or something. They're like, they were recruited by this special unit in Scotland Yard.
Yes.
By this shadowy figure who, like, they just, see him in a darkened room. They actually see him, and he's the one who, like, hand recruits or hand picks each of them for this special task force to go in and root out anarchism or anarchists. So, and as Adam says, it's like in the beginning, the head guy Sunday, says there's a traitor among us, and so of course this guy Thursday, who like the readers following along since the beginning, assumes it's him, and he's getting ready. He's like, well, I'm going to go down with a fight, and he's getting ready, and then Sunday accuses some other guy, and that guy admits, oh yes, I work for Scotland Yard, and runs away or something. So anyway, and it's just one by one that keeps happening.
Yeah, and it bears reinforcing that at each chase scene / battle where it becomes revealed that another one of these days of the week anarchists is actually an undercover police officer, the encounters just get weirder and weirder. Like if you started out, and along the way there's a whole bunch of philosophical discussions, societal discussions, religious discussions even. So it's really interesting all the way through. And then the final upshot is that the lead anarchist, who is just this terrifying figure, huge, I don't know, Andre the Giant, except more impressive. He ends up being the leader in the police of this shadowy infiltration unit that sent all these other 6. Anyway, it becomes truly... Well, the subtitle is... The Man Who Was Thursday, A Nightmare. Mm-hmm. And what was so great is that the beginning of the book, Symes is walking with his new interlocutor Gregory to this anarchist meeting, and then a whole bunch of weird things happen at the end, and I'm going to rely on Bob to describe. And when it all ends up coming to a close, he wakes up, as it were, in the morning, walking towards home with this newfound friend, this Gregory. So the whole cops and robbers adventure, with all its philosophical interest and political intrigue and poetry, it was all a sort of a fugue, a nightmare. And I just thought that was really cool.
Okay, well, good summary. Now, do you want to now that you summarize the plot, like, do you want to give some of your thoughts on it, or do you want to? What do you want?
Not me, bub. You drug this horse to the party. I'm going to make you go first.
Okay. So let me start. Oh, shoot, I just lost my. I had put a note here.
I will say that it's a great read. The prose was really chewy, and that means more than just I had to look up a few words because it's 1908. But he's also just a really interesting writer where he throws adjectives and adverbs in weird spots. It just makes his sentences really interesting. And a lot of times, books from that era by writers such as this, the prose is impenetrable and just a chore to read. And it's not like that. It was a really quick read because it's interesting and they had a lot of cool ideas in it. So there's that.
Yeah, there's a blurb on the back from Kingsley Amis, who I'm not familiar with, that says the most thrilling book I have ever read. And I do remember, because I was a little insecure when I told you to read this ad because I haven't read it since undergrad, and I was just worried, like, oh, is this like, am I gonna get into this? Like, what the heck did I pick this for? That doesn't hold up or something. But no, I was, when I was 5 pages into it, I was like, I have to put this down because otherwise I'm just gonna stay up all night and read this, and I'm gonna be miserable tomorrow at work. It was that kind of thing. And so, yeah, I think it grabs you right away. And like you're saying, Adam, it be putting the plot and the deeper philosophical issues to the side for the moment, just the way it carries you along. So in the beginning, when the two poets, are going at it, and then like, what was it that made the anarchist willing to take in the other guy who he didn't realize at the time that he was working for Scotland Yard, but why did he take him into his, and it was because he so bothered him with his challenges of, and even here, we're not doing it justice, folks. Like it was very clever, banter back and forth between them. And, sort of along the lines of, it was, what it reminded me of, you remember, The Big Lebowski, when they were like, we are nihilists, we believe nothing. And he was just like, that must be exhausting. And that's just a great, you know what I mean? Like, not talking about.
Yeah, he wasn't trying to say, anarchism is dangerous or bad. He's like, you're not an anarchist. Shut up.
Yeah. And so, because they were like, the guy was like taking umbrage or something. He's like, wait, we have conventions now? I didn't think we were doing that, that sort of thing. And so anyway, so the anarchist guy is saying to him, that way you have of lighting a cigar would make a priest break the seal of confession. You know what I mean? It's just little things like that. But then, just the absurdity of it. And I think here, again, Chesterton is poking fun at the anarchists. And we should say, and I don't know how much we want to go into this, Adam, if you want to dwell on it, but of course I like this because, I'm an anarchist. But here, Chesterton means it in the old school of people throwing bombs and trying to kill political officials and people who are opposed to marriage per se. And he even has a long thing. I don't know if you were you going to read that, where he has the common philanderer, or the bigamist. You know what I'm talking about? Remember that passage where he's like explaining why I'm, I as a poet devoted myself to rooting out anarchy. And so, okay, so I don't want to steal your thunder, but anyway, folks, he's got this thing where he goes off on why is it that I've made it my mission in life to go root out anarchy. And he says, because they're the worst form of, antisocial behavior that he says, I'm paraphrasing here, but this is the kind of stuff he was saying that even the bigamist respects marriage and he's just abusing it or something. Whereas the anarchist doesn't believe in the institution of marriage. And he just goes through and says things like that, or the common thief believes in property. It's just, he wants your property to be his. Whereas the anarchist rejects the notion of property, so he does stuff like that. So there's that. But then again, to highlight the absurdity, I just thought this was funny that, they're talking, he says, I drew my sword and waved it constantly. I called it blood abstractly, like a man calling for wine. I often said, let the weak perish, it is the law. Well, it seems majors don't do this. I was nabbed again. At last, I went in despair to the president of the Central Anarchist Council, who is the greatest man in Europe. And what is his name? And you would not know it, says Gregory. He's going on he's talking about Sunday. But again, just that note, I underlined it. The president of the Central Anarchist Council, right? And so I think, Chesterton's poking fun at these guys are all anarchists, and yet they have elections and they give speeches and they elect people to go sit on this board that represents all of the anarchists in the region.
As you know, for my penance and my many sins, I've been involved in the Libertarian Party here in Nevada and briefly on the national board. And so when you see these anarchists all convened at their board, it just was hilarious to me that they were using Robert's Rules of Order. That is funny.
Yeah. Let me just... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. You finish up.
Okay, yeah. So then just another example. Again, folks, I'm just trying to show you what Adam and I mean here when we say, like, it's a very fun read besides, the broader issues and the scaffolding or whatever, where it's going. So later, and again, just to highlight the absurdity of these people in Chesterton's, mind when he gets to control them, they're referring to this. So the reason they have to fill the slot of Thursday is because something happened to the previous guy. So here they're lauding the prior person who held this position. We all lament the sad decease of the heroic worker who occupied the post until last week. As you know, his services to the cause were considerable. He organized the great dynamite coup of Brighton, which, under happier circumstances, ought to have killed everybody on the pier. As you also know, his death was as self-denying as his life, for he died through his faith in a hygienic mixture of chalk and water as a substitute for milk, which beverage he regarded as barbaric as it involved cruelty to the cow. Cruelty, or anything approaching to cruelty, revolted him always. Okay,
right.
So
that's so great.
Yeah, so you can see the juxtaposition. So clearly there, again, but I like it's subtle. Like Chesterton's not beating you over the head with it, at least not in those two passages I read. But you're reading, you're like, wait a second, what? And also, I mean, yes, there's hyperbole and comedy is exaggeration, but like how many people do you see on Twitter every day who are vegans and yet are like, pro-abortion, but, you could say, okay, but I mean, clearly want Charlie Kirk fans all exterminated. You know what I mean? But I'm vegan because I wouldn't hurt. I would like if they found a spider, they would like carry it outside and put it in the woods or something.
And posting anti-capitalist memes on their iPhone. Just completely tone deaf as to their behaviors contradicting their stated values. I was interested right at the very beginning because both characters are posing as poets, or maybe they are. They have a poetic character and they're posing before an audience. And Gregory is saying that to be a true poet is to love anarchy. And among his examples of what that is, he pointed to the bottom-up structure of a tree, which I thought was really interesting. I mean, it's an emergent order. I wouldn't call it bomb-throwing anarchy, but it does harken to the definition of anarchy you and I would agree with. And then his opponent, Symes, says, no, you're crazy. True poetry is order. And he gives as his example the timetable for the London Underground, and it says this on a piece of paper, and gosh darn it, the train arrives at that time, and that's just beautiful. That's poetic. And just right off the bat, I thought, well, those are a couple of really cool ideas to put in tension. And I just couldn't wait to see where it ended up. I had no idea where it was going to end up. And again, I'm going to make you talk about the ending, Bob. Because that was wild.
Well, before we do that, let me just give another example. I'm just flipping through here. When I came across a passage that I thought was particularly interesting. Because again, it's like the narrator makes observations on things that like gives you his like Chesterton's views on humanity, let's say. And so here's one element going on when he the main character Thursday now first goes to this brunch or something where he meets Sunday or sees Sunday for the first time. And, he's a huge figure. He's like Adam was saying that he's the way they describe it, he's like as big as Honor the Giant or something. He's just a massive man besides being extremely intelligent and, just formidable. And so it's going through and talking about like letting the reader know. Now you might think this is going on in his head, but it's not. And so it said there was a second thought that never came to him. it never occurred to him to be spiritually won over to the enemy. Many moderns, inured to a weak worship of intellect and force, might have wavered in their allegiance under this oppression of a great personality. They might have called Sunday the Superman. If any such creature be conceivable, he looked indeed somewhat like it, with his earth-shaking abstraction as of a stone statue walking. He might have been called something above man, with his large plans, which were too obvious to be detected, with his large face, which was too frank to be understood. But this was a kind of modern meanness to which Syme could not sink, even in his extreme morbidity. So this is the sentence I really liked. Like any man, he was coward enough to fear great force, but he was not quite coward enough to admire it. Right? So I thought that was an interesting, so Chesterton is saying that, yeah, everybody, is afraid of a strong person, but the kind of people that are attracted to a strong tyrant are supreme cowards, and so anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
Especially when you get to the end and you see what that figure is supposed to be alluding to. I mean, the prose you just read there, so obvious that it couldn't be perceived and so frank it couldn't be beheld. I'm no biblical sort of person, but I mean, I could see what he was reaching for, trying to describe sort of obliquely before he got there. But again, it's a well-written book, folks. Do you have any thoughts about I mean, it's an absurd tale because it hinges upon Gregory wrests a promise out of Symes at the very beginning that he will not reveal what he's about to experience in this cadre of anarchists. And Syme holds that promise throughout the whole crazy story, and also wrests the exact reciprocal promise from Gregory that he won't reveal that he's a policeman when he's about to tell him he's a policeman. Right. And the whole plot hinges on that, which is like, yes. It's insane, and okay, this is a nightmare, so it's okay when you get to the end. But also, as I was reading it in 2025, I'm thinking, well, maybe 1908 is just such a more honorable time that this made more sense back then, that people would actually behave so honorably in a fictional story that's believable.
Yeah, let me make sure the viewers are getting what you did, because you're right. Early on, when it really just pulls you in right away, it's so again, on the surface, there's two poets, having at it, because the one guy always held court. And then this newcomer comes in and starts challenging his anarchist ideas because nobody else ever stood up to the guy. It's kind of like the scene in Good Will Hunting or something. When,
right.
Matt Damon,
Right, yes,
that is,
exactly.
How do you like them apples? So, challenging him. And then, as we said, the anarchist poet, grabs him later, like the guy's out on a walk or something, comes up to him and says, oh, you're talking trash or whatever. Here, I can prove to you that I'm not just boasting, but you have to promise what I'm going to show you tonight you will reveal to no one. And the guy says, okay. And then, when he takes him, he says, I'm going to take you into the anarchist council. Then the other guy at that point says to him, okay, but there's something I need to tell you, and you have to promise before I tell you, you swear you will not reveal my secret too. And he goes, okay. He says, I work for Scotland Yard. And so now, the anarchist guy has to take him into this council, and they're both pinned or something with each other, and they're and so that's what gives rise, because now they're going to nominate, and like Adam said, the other guy who thought he was a shoo-in to be elected to replace the other guy third, now because there's a detective from Scotland Yard, he wants to warn his comrades, but he can't because he promised he wouldn't. And so, but he's allowed to alter what his speech is, right, to say why you should all elect me to go be our representative on the anarchist board. But he waters it down. And oh yeah, people talk about throwing bombs, but really we just want to change men's hearts. And he does that kind of stuff. And then the other guy gets up and he says, well, I volunteer myself. So he had been introduced to the group as another anarchist. That's why they let him in there. And he knew the password and stuff because the other guy had told him. And so then he unexpectedly volunteered. And so again, the other guy is sitting there watching him give this, fire-breathing speech about no, we're seriously, we got to turn up the dial on anarchy here in Europe to, shake these people to their core, show them we mean business. And so it's interesting as you're sitting there, because like you said, Em, the whole thing is ridiculous that an anarchist who's a bomb thrower like literally wants to murder his opponents and everything, and doesn't believe in conventions or rules or anything.
Can't break a promise, though.
So, well, geez, I promised the guy, and so even though I'm sitting here and I know he's from Scotland Yard and he's about to get elected to be Thursday, I can't break my promise. So the whole thing like is ridiculous. They did say at one point later, because again, as it comes out, folks, that they are going to these periodic meetings run by Sunday. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, etc. Or sitting around the table with Sunday in charge, running the meeting. Like, okay, and then we're going to do this, and we're going to have a bomb, and you're going to take out this leader, and you're going to do this. Okay, and who's in charge of that? All right, fair enough. What should we use? What kind of weaponry? And they're as they one by one uncover and realize, oh wait, you're with Scotland Yard too. When they have these encounters, and then they explain like each of them is likewise like bound by this pact. That's why they can't. Because you might just think, well, geez, why don't they just run down and get the constables and come and arrest Sunday with like 20 guys? What's he going to do with batons and stuff? What's he going to do? But no, they can't. It's in other words, it's not like the FBI is letting the low-level drug dealers keep doing their deals because they're trying to get the big guy. Like, no, they know who the big guy is or whatever, and yet they're all bound by these pacts of secret. And at one point, Sim says something like, if you remember, Adam, that to break my word to an anarchist would be like stealing from a baby, or he says something like that. Like you just can't do that. That would just...
Folks, let's take a break from the action for this important announcement. If you care about your liberty and your financial freedom, you need to hear this. From October 10th through 12th, Mikkel Thorpe, host of the Expat Money Show, who's been a guest on this program, is bringing together top experts from around the world for the Expat Money Online Summit, and it's completely free to attend. You'll learn how to legally protect your wealth, secure second residencies and citizenships, reduce your tax burden, and own property abroad, all to safeguard your freedom. This year's focus is Latin America, where opportunity is booming. Argentina is shifting to free markets. And as an aside, word on the street is that Milei recently told his top lieutenants that they should go read my booklet, Chaos Theory. True story. That really happened. El Salvador is undergoing a dramatic transformation, and Panama and Paraguay are offering simple residency programs. A Plan B is no longer optional. It's essential. So reserve your free ticket at expatmoneysummit.com. That's expatmoneysummit.com. expatmoneysummit.com for your free ticket. Do it today. Let's get back to the show now.
All right. So yeah, there is the absurdity piled on there, but I think that like added to the story. So my guess is that no, people in the early 1900s also reading this would realize that's ridiculous, that they would have that sense. But you know what? It's kind of like I noticed this elsewhere in Be Thankful I didn't make you watch what is it? The Little Mermaid? Is that the name of that movie?
The new one?
No, the classic. The is it The Little Mermaid? Is that what it's called?
There is such a thing. I don't know.
Like she sings and she okay.
That's it. You got it. The Little Mermaid.
Part of your world.
Half fish, half little girl.
So in that, there's a neat thing where, is it Ariel? I think is her. I'm not playing dumb. It's not like I know this anyway. And she
Hans
signs,
Christian Andersen.
She there's the evil witch or something, right? Like you'll I can turn you into. I forget what they make some exchange, right? And she signs the contract by which she sells her soul or whatever, gives her voice. I forget what the deal is, but like she makes a bargain with this evil lady that she really shouldn't have, and she signs something, and so then later I think it's Ariel's dad, who's like Neptune or something in the movie, like is mad and he like shoots a thunderbolt or something, and the witch just holds up the contract. And the thunderbolt just bounces off of it. I might be getting the details, but it's something like that. I just want to say there's something like in these old classic fairy tales where it's like, well, no, if the evil leprechaun says, or Rumpelstiltskin, if you give your word, then that's it. Sorry, you know what I mean? Like where there is this kind of thing like in lore and folk tales where like, yeah, if you promised the guy that you weren't going to reveal his secret, and then that was the condition, and he tells you he's from Scotland Yard, yeah, you can't go back on that. Otherwise, the story doesn't work. So.
Yeah, if I were to channel my Jordan Peterson-ness, I would say that these stories are underscoring a really essential truth about our species, that the power of a contract or a promise is something really, really important.
I have another one. Sorry, do you want to keep going? Sorry.
Yeah, but it was mealy.
I'm just so excited.
Terrible. You go ahead.
What is it? The Devil Went Down to Georgia. Is that the name of that song? At the end, and the devil, because he knew he'd been beat. Like, the devil's not willing to lie. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's like, well, no, I beat you fair and square. The devil's like, yeah, you got me. Okay, here's my fiddle. So I'm just saying, like, even there, like, it wouldn't make sense at the end of that for the devil to say, yeah, no, I think I won.
Yeah, we just say, well, really, musical preference is arbitrary, and who's to say which one of those was better?
Right. So anyway, do you get the? Maybe some of the viewers are like, yeah, but we got your point 8 minutes ago. Keep going. But anyway, I'm just saying that it just seems like in literature and whatever, in these folk tales, or like my favorite Irish tale, the guy, have we talked about this one, Adam? It'll be real fast. That the kid catches the leprechaun, like he grabs a hold of him, and then so the leprechaun has to show him where his pot of gold is. Like, that's the rules.
That's the rules.
He says, okay. He said, okay, I promise. He said, it's over that hill. You let me go. You have my word. I will go, and I will tie. It's buried under a tree, and I will tie a golden ribbon around the tree under which it's buried.
And every other.
And he does. Yep. And so he goes, lets him, and then the kid gets over the hill, and every single tree in the forest has a golden ribbon around. Right. So stuff like that, where it's like, he got you. But it wouldn't have worked if he just said, nah, screw you, kid, and kicked him in the nuts and took off. I mean? Like, what kind of story is that? What kind of lesson is there? So
there is a lesson. It's just a little more earthy.
Yeah. Okay. Are we talking about a book or something?
We were talking about a book or something. I have so many questions. Do you want to describe the ending of
No,
this
you
nightmare?
do it, because obviously you've asked me 3 times to do it, and I keep dodging. You do it.
Well, I might reveal my poor reading comprehension. Okay. Very near the end, once they get to the point where everybody except Sunday has realized that they are also all members of Scotland Yard, so they chase Sunday all across Tarnation up until this giant castle. And there, Sunday presides over a party where the officers are all cleaned up and given costumes representing their day of the week that bear some relation to the story of Genesis, where the earth was created and the heavens and that whole story, and each one of them gets an outfit that is emblematic of that title. And then they sit on a dais before a bunch of cavorting dreamlike characters, and then Gregory comes into the story and complains at them, I assume taking the part of man in his complaints. And so that's where I think Thursday sort of passes out, or Symes, and then he ends up waking up at the end, and he's just sitting there next to his friend. He's been talking all these weird things about in a fugue-like state all night. So I have so many questions. What exactly was that supposed to represent? Why did Chesterton make the lead character Thursday? I think there's something. I think that choice was important. He's trying to say something about, creating the stars and the moon and the sun, differentiating all of heavenly light into these concrete forms. And then, based on all that discussion of poetry and anarchism and all the rest of it, what the heck do you think this book that you recommended was about, Dr. Murphy?
Okay, so rather than me saying what it's about, I can tell you what I took from it. How's that?
Okay.
Okay, so but to address some of your questions. I feel unburdened once we decided we're just going to tell people what happened. And if you folks listen to us before you read the book, I don't know what you're thinking.
If we managed to tell anybody what happened, because the words that we said were pretty weird.
This is like an Alan Greenspan press conference. Yeah, so as Adam said, they all go to this soiree. Well, I mean, first of all, they're all chasing Sunday around once they realize that, wait, we're all from Scotland Yard. And then at some point when they're trying, he's like, who are you? And he says, I'm the one who recruited all of you, you fools, or something like that. And he's going, but it's this weird thing where, and it's hard to do justice to it, but as they're chasing him and he's eluding them, even though he's this huge guy and he's like graceful and doing acrobatic stuff or whatever to get away from him at the last moment each time when they almost have him. But he's doing goofy stuff too, like comical. Like throwing like notes at them and they go open up the note and it's just goofy stuff. And it's like, what the heck? Yeah. And so there's that, going on too. And they realize the guy who recruited us to chase him is now giving us weird notes that are like sophomoric humor or something. What the heck is going on? And so then, finally near the end, they're all at this banquet or event or something. And they're all given, as Adam said, garb that is appropriate to the day after which they were named. And so it says, let's see. He saw the secretary standing at the top of a great flight of stairs. The man had never looked so noble. He was draped in a long robe of starless black, down into the center of which fell a band or broad stripe of pure white, like a single shaft of light. Okay, so he, stood for the day when, God created light and separated from the darkness. And then, because of course, folks, because the days of the week are like the Genesis account of creation, like that's the tie-in. And so then, talking about Sim now, if Sim had been able to see himself, he would have realized that he too seemed to be for the first time himself and no one else. For if the secretary stood for that philosopher who loves and by the way, the secretary had been a philosopher and was recruited into the special task force, just like Sim was not a career police officer or detective. He was a poet who hated anarchy and was, recruited in for that purpose. Okay, so for if the secretary stood for that philosopher who loves the original and formless light, Sim was the type of poet who seeks always to make the light in special shapes to split it up into sun and star. The philosopher may sometimes love the infinite. The poet always loves the finite. For him, the great moment is not the creation of light, but the creation of the sun and moon. Okay, so I could be wrong, but I think it's not so much that, the important thing is Thursday and the creation of the sun and the moon. Like, you need light before you can talk about the sun and the moon and like to differentiate it. And so why he picked Thursday and not Tuesday there, I don't have a strong view, and maybe Chesterton would. But I think it's more that like each day of the week does represent something important. It's sort of like I bring everything back to Harry Potter, right? It's not like which house is the good one and which ones aren't. I don't mean good and evil. I mean like what house is the one that has the cool traits and the other houses are stupid. Like it's like no, they each actually. Yeah. Obviously, like the reader probably is rooting and would want to be in the house that Harry's in, but it's not that the other ones are bad or something. So there's that element to it there, and then of
course, that's what a guy who from House Hufflepuff who would say, Bob.
Right. Let's see. So this was interesting, I thought. And each of the people, like, as they're going around, like, they had different reactions. Like, as they're, like, finally talking to Sunday, like, what did you just put us through? What the heck is the point of all this? And Sim is actually not as upset with him and whatnot. So I thought this was interesting that, let's see, Sim sprang to his, how do you pronounce his name? Is it Syme or Sim?
It's Syme. I've been saying Syme this whole time.
Okay, I want to be consistent with you. So Syme sprang to his feet. He's not like Skewer. Simon Thursday. She's an Aryan influence from 1908. It's weird. Syme sprang to his feet, shaking from head to foot. I see everything, he cried, everything that there is. Why does each thing on the earth war against each other thing? Why does each small thing in the world have to fight against the world itself? Why does a fly have to fight the whole universe? So that each thing that obeys laws may have the glory and isolation of the anarchist, so that each man fighting for order may be as brave and good as a man as the dynamiter, so that the real lie of Satan may be flung back in the face of this blasphemer, so that by tears and torture we may earn the right to say to this man, you lie. No agonies can be too great to buy the right to say to this accuser, we have also suffered. All right, so there, I realize without me giving the fuller context, it's not as clear what he's getting at it, but it ties into something. I'll just say it and then you can react. When you say, why does God allow bad things to happen? I think part of the explanation is, again, now this is the full story. I mean, it's a hard question, but I think it's something like to prove that good is stronger than evil, and that it would be cheating if, like, he didn't let the devil ever torture, you give cancer to little kids. You know what I mean? Because then it'd almost be like, you say, yeah, but if you really let evil just have its way and just run roughshod, then clearly evil would win. And you say, no, go ahead. And I'm telling you, in the long run, good will triumph over evil. And you say, yeah, but what if we like torture people? Okay, go ahead.
Even still.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. Whereas if you didn't, if it was always, and like it kind of goes to the story of Job. Like that's literally how the story starts. Is Satan, or God actually boasts to Satan, saying, "Have you seen my servant Job?" And then the devil says, "Yeah, it's just because he's the richest guy alive and he's got tons of kids and whatever. If adversity hit him, he'd stop praising you." And again, God, step by step. So, okay, go ahead. You can't do this. Okay. You can't kill him though. You can, give him boils. Okay. So I think that's partly what was going on there. And Syme was saying the part of the reason that Sunday, like he's seeing it now, and we don't want to give the anarchists the ability to say, we've suffered, like we're the underclass, and you rich people, you just have it so well, you don't get our plight. And that, so Syme, I think, is saying, no, this is kind of the function of why suffering is so pervasive, that that nobody can. Satan, we've taken that trump card away from Satan, something like that.
Very good. Yeah, as you were speaking, I've been thinking about what my own understanding of the theme is. And I think what you said dovetails with my own thoughts. You just said it in a smarty pants way. But what I was thinking about the theme is that you've got this nightmare of a story that is all about ideas in opposition and conflict and society, ending with a biblical story of all things. I mean, there's swordplay in this thing. There's deception. There's disguises. There's running through the cobblestone streets of London. It's a madhouse. But right at the beginning, when these two characters are talking, before Gregory takes Syme to the anarchists' meeting, Syme meets Gregory's sister and is quite taken with her, which will become somewhat relevant in a second here. I think the theme, in many ways, is just the simple appreciation of being, as lame and anticlimactic as that is. And I think it basically, because of the end of the book, do you mind if I just read the last 3-ish paragraphs?
Oh, I thought you were going to say pages. I say I might. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
No, this isn't that bad. So remember, this was a huge nightmare, and he sort of comes to walking down the street in the morning next to Gregory. So here's the end of the book. Quote, "For while he could always remember afterwards that he had swooned before the face of Sunday, he could not remember having ever come to at all. He could only remember that gradually and naturally he knew that he was and had been walking along a country lane with an easy and conversational companion. That companion had been a part of his recent drama. It was the red-haired poet Gregory. They were walking like old friends and were in the middle of a conversation about some triviality. But Syme could only feel an unnatural buoyancy in his body and a crystal simplicity in his mind that seemed to be superior to everything that he said or did. He felt he was in possession of some impossible good news, which made every other thing a triviality, but an adorable triviality. Dawn was breaking over everything in colors at once clear and timid, as if nature made a first attempt at yellow and a first attempt at rose. A breeze blew so clean and sweet that one could not think that it blew from the sky. It blew rather from some hole in the sky. Syme felt a simple surprise when he saw rising all around him on both sides of the road the red, irregular buildings of Saffron Park. That's where the story starts, folks. He had no idea that he had walked so near London. He walked by instinct along one white road on which early birds hopped and sang, and found himself outside a fenced garden. There he saw the sister of Gregory, the girl with the gold-red hair, cutting lilac before breakfast, with the great unconscious gravity of a girl. And that is why I believe what I believe, that he's just trying to tell a story about crazy ideas and contradistinction, chasing all around the city, fighting each other. I mean, fighting themselves. This is the cops versus the cops, or the anarchist versus the anarchist, depending on how you look at this story. And I think if there's a lesson to be learned, it's just to calm down and relax and take long walks with good friends and fall in love and just be. You know, the crystal simplicity that made all the complexities seem adorable. It's kind of the way they treat us libertarians. You know, what are you getting all bent out of shape for? Your ideas are just, you're adorable little fellas. What a cute political party.
So I think, yes, I think it is all that. I think it's just go find yourself a redhead girl. But I want to stress, like, this is clearly not just because of the allusions to Genesis, but it's clearly Christian. Because early, like the page before, so somebody says to Sunday, have you ever suffered? And as he gazed, the great face grew to an awful size, grew larger than the colossal mask of Memnon, which had made him scream as a child. It grew larger and larger, filling the whole sky. Then everything went black. Only in the blackness, before it entirely destroyed his brain, he seemed to hear a distant voice saying a commonplace text that he had heard somewhere, quote, "Can ye drink of the cup that I drink of?" All right, so that's clearly a reference to Jesus, right, before his, crucifixion. And, so it's tying in there. And what was interesting to me about that, Adam, is if you remember when we did that whole episode on Daryl Cooper's appearance on that comedian, what was it, like the Family Hour with such and such or something?
Duncan Trussell?
Something like that, yeah. And if you remember, that was like one of the things where he was saying, like, in standard Christian orthodoxy, the crucifixion reconciles us back to God.
Yeah.
But Cooper flipped it, and he was like, no, it's almost like, because ultimately every bad thing that happens, like, kind of the buck stops with God. He's omnipotent. He designed everything. And so there's a sense in which it's like, okay, you know how you guys have been suffering and all this stuff? I'm going to come down, become one of you, and wait till you see what happens to me in my plan. Like, to kind of be like, oh, okay, like, he's okay. So to me, that it seemed like that was going on there. That, like, this, the people that are angry at Sunday, like, look, all you put us through. Have you ever suffered? And then, his face gets really big, and, like, he just to realize it's almost like, oh, who are we to challenge him? Sort of like in the story of Job near the end. I remember the first time I read that as a serious reader, I kept waiting for, because Job was like wondering, why does this keep happening? I've been following the law. I've been a faithful servant. I can't understand why this calamity. And his friends are telling him, no, you must have done something. Come on. And he's like, no, I didn't. He's getting mad. And then I kept waiting for God to show up and say something like, oh, well, I put you through this because, see, it's going to be written down, and thousands of people for millennia are going to be, or billions of people for millennia are going to be reading that. And that's not what he said. He's like, did you make the sun and the stars in the heavens? Did you make the Leviathan? No, I did. Just like, in other words, telling who are you to talk to me. So it seems like that's what Sunday's doing there. Like someone, has the insolence to say to him, have you ever suffered? And his face gets red. But then he says, are you ready to drink of this cup that I am? Meaning, yes, that I suffered more than you. So anyway, it's a very, Christian thing. And so then in that part that you'd read, that was my long preface, that when he says this impossible good news, like, among Christians, the good news is the gospel.
Right.
That maybe this is the point I have to like explain. For whatever reason, it really just clicked with me when I as I was reading it the first time and realized that, it's not just that one by one, because at some point you get the pattern, you start anticipating like, does this whole council just going to all be detectives? And then you start, I can't remember back to when I first read that. I'm curious of your take that. Well, let me just ask you before I finish the train of thought. Did you know that Sunday was also going to be that?
The second
recruiter?
that Syme described Sunday from behind, as he's approaching the garden terrace where they're having breakfast, and described him as this kingpin from the Marvel Universe styled behemoth, I knew it had to be the guy in the darkened room.
Oh, okay. So you knew very early on.
I did not know. That did not mean in my head that I knew all of the other members were going to be policemen too.
Oh, wow. Well, that's interesting. Okay, because I'm pretty sure that I didn't make that leap in the beginning. I think I had to see a few of the individuals fall off before I.
As soon as the first one did, I knew where this was going. I
Yeah.
mean, I guess I should have put it together immediately, but
Okay. So anyway, for whatever reason, when that clicked again, I don't remember if I took until it literally said it or I just anticipated, but it for whatever reason, like it really sunk in. Like I've used this analogy before, but when I was younger, I used to think it was like, there's this battle between good and evil, and it's like God versus the devil, and God's stronger. Okay, that's good, and that's not what it is. Like in the Christian story, it's it's not that God is like or Jesus is like Luke Skywalker or Yoda, and the devil is Darth Vader or the Emperor. No. God is George Lucas, and then good people are, Yoda and blah blah blah, and bad people. You get what I'm saying? So, that's what I mean. Like, and there is a weirdness to that, and this gets into like Calvinism, all this. So there's lots of arguments. So I will steer clear of any doctrinal controversies, but just there is this sense in which if you think God is omnipotent and He created everything, there is a sense in which any bad thing that happens, He allows at the very least. And He sees it coming. It's not that He's caught off guard. And so that's a weird thing. And so for whatever reason in this, like it just clicked. Like when you could understand why would Sunday be doing this. So anyway, I always thought that was great. And to the point where just a few months ago, somebody on social media was talking about this issue, and how, like the person was a fan of R.C. Sproul, and she was saying how, it's hard for like new Christians or whatever to grapple with this, or because you're so tainted by what the world teaches you about how things should work. It's hard to grapple with this stuff. That there's a sense in which God ordains evil outcomes. Not that God causes evil, but there's a weird sense. Okay. And I even said, that didn't click for me until I read GK Chesterton's The Man It Was Thursday, right? So I'm sitting there promoting it. The reason I'm beating this to death, Adam, is because then I was shocked, absolutely shocked. Did you read the appendix?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll be quick here, folks. That Chesterton's starting out here, and they have an excerpt from this appendix where this essay he wrote later, from 1936, where he talks about The Man It Was Thursday and the critical reaction and blah, blah, blah. And he says, I happen to have a very strong objection to that trick of missing the point of a story, or sometimes even the obvious sense of the very name of a story. I have sometimes had occasion to murmur meekly that those who endure the heavy labor of reading a book might possibly endure that of reading the title page of a book. For there are more examples than may be imagined in which earnest critics might solve many of their problems about what a book is merely by discovering what it professes to be. Okay? And so I'm sitting here cracking up reading this, and then he goes on to say that there are people out there who thought Sunday was supposed to be like what I thought God was. And he's just astonished that how could anyone possibly think that? And he says, now in my case, it wasn't the title, it was the subtitle. That was called A Nightmare. And that just floored me because, like I said, I've been walking around for decades thinking, yes, I did not fully understand systematic reform theology until I read GK Chesterton. So maybe just that he hates Calvinism and whatever. But I think at the very, I mean, let me put it this way. He's not perverting Christianity and the stuff at the end there. Like clearly he's trying to shine light on some of its deeper mysteries. And so I almost wonder if he's like, if he protests too much or whatever. With that.
It can't be. I mean, I've read the character of Sunday as God as well, but it's not really God. This is all something happening inside Symes's head during a walking nightmare, which doesn't make it unimportant. And I'm confused by what Chesterton said there because this enormous, brilliant, terrible to behold creature. Yeah, that clearly had to be God.
Oh, okay.
And he swooned before it and then came to. And just the final thing, I really think that we were supposed to take from that rather than going nuts with these intellectual controversies and whatnot, why don't you just follow the rules and embody goodness, and you can go live a happy life.
Yeah, I want to come back to let me just make sure. Let me read the thing explicitly just so everyone knows exactly what he says. So there's a ... This is an excerpt from this essay. It is odd that one example, alluding to when critics don't even bother reading the title of a book, it is odd that one example occurred in my own case in a book called The Man Who Was Thursday. It was a very melodramatic sort of moonshine, but it had a kind of notion in it. And the point is that it described, first, a band of the last champions of order fighting against what appeared to be a world of anarchy, and then the discovery that the mysterious master, both of the anarchy and the order, was the same sort of elemental elf who had appeared to be rather too like a pantomime ogre. This line of logic, or lunacy, led many to infer that this equivocal being was meant for a serious description of the deity, and my work even enjoyed a temporary respect among those who liked the deity to be so described. So here he's describing me. But this error was entirely due to the fact that they had read the book but had not read the title page. In my case, it is true, it was a question of a subtitle. The book was called The Man Who Was Thursday, A Nightmare. It was not intended to describe the real world as it was or as I thought it was, even when my thoughts were considerably less settled than they are now. It was intended to describe the world of wild doubt and despair, which the pessimists were generally describing at that date, with just a gleam of hope in some double meaning of the doubt, which even the pessimists felt in some fitful fashion. All right, so
maybe it's one of those things, Bob, where if you really, really enjoy a band's music, don't ever go see the lead singer being interviewed about what he thinks about his music or life or politics or anything.
Right.
So just read the book.
What did you mean when you call it Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds? There's allusion to LSD. He's like, no, my daughter just drew it at school. What do you, yeah, so
I was in a time crunch. We had to get a song recorded. All right.
I mean, they're like, again, maybe it's false modesty or whatever, but to me, besides the fact that, that was my interpretation that was near and dear to my heart, how he kind of just dismissed it. Oh, it's just moon. Like, he made it sound there like it was like, oh yeah, I just banged that thing off on a weekend. Whatever. Don't read too much into it. When no, that was a pretty deep book.
You also have to, like, every time you see somebody say something so surprising, you wonder like what the social situation is, or even the political situation. Like, was he under some sort of pressure? Think, Galileo back, before the court or something. You always wonder, is he just trying to get out of something or not have a fight? Or
let me say this. I think I'll make an analogy to economics. So if you want to explain something in economics and you're trying to isolate, like what's the impact of a tariff or whatever, and you say, well, what if there were two countries and two goods, and you go ahead and you can work it out there, and then somebody can just say, well, that's stupid. That's not. And it was like, well, the ultimate thing is tricky, right? And it's complicated, and so we can try to So I feel like, yes, that wasn't Chesterton writing on Orthodox theology. He has the book Orthodoxy where he tries to do that, and there it's, he's got a fuller, more biblically accurate notion of what he thinks God is. But I'm saying in the confines of this thing, I think he did let certain things run their course, and just with the few variables he had at play, to abuse the metaphor or whatever, I think stuff popped out of that. Like, it was an interesting, and I think that, and that's why I stressed earlier, Adam, how like he kind of had a sense of humor. And I think that's true. Like, there's stuff that happens where it has happened in my life after I was a believer with certain things, and I literally look up at the sky and I go, "You're a funny guy." And I'm not saying it like ha ha. I'm saying it like I'm mad. Like, you're a funny guy. Like, that's how I say it. So anyway, but he is. Like, I'm not saying that as a figure of speech. It's like, okay, that was funny, I'll grant you, but I'm really pissed off right now that you let that happen. So
back to like, well, Chesterton might have been, just having fun. But also the work is completely separate from the creator of the work. And I mention it because an upcoming episode of Haman Nature, my separate show, other than these crossovers, a buddy of mine and me watched Adolescence, and we have many thoughts about it. A 4-part show on Netflix about a murder in the UK. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things where I heard a bunch of negative things about the story, and then I watched it, and I thought it had a bunch of redeeming qualities.
The murder or the story? The
story. The story, Bob.
Yeah, I go in prima facie opposed, but I mean, no, you should hear what this guy was doing.
So I'm ticking the scorecard up in my mind about the merits of this piece of work. And then I watched a few interviews of the creators, and I'm like, ugh. Uh-huh. Which just goes to show, just like you were saying, sometimes when artists do things, they let the logic of their piece just go forward, and maybe they make something that is not what they intended. Because the lessons I gleaned from it were sure not the ones they were talking to the morning show goofballs when they were being interviewed. It was worlds apart.
Okay, glad you said that. It's interesting to make a Seinfeld analogy. Somehow I was visiting my brother and we were watching like old Seinfeld. I mean, of course they were old. We're watching Seinfeld episodes. And like, whatever reason, like, I was just in this analytical mood or whatever, reflective, and I was going meta, and it just became crystal clear to me about like, oh, the reason George is like that is because of his parents. Like, in other words, this show would not have worked if Jerry's parents were George's parents and vice versa. Do you get what I'm saying? Like,
of course, yeah.
And I don't know that the writers like actually consciously thought that when they were like deciding, okay, well, now we've got the main characters here, let's bring in, next episode we'll bring in Jerry's parents. Who should we cast for that? What kind of you know what I mean? Like, I think it probably just happened so naturally, and they just knew, oh yeah, George's parents have to be way over the top.
I'm fairly certain that George Costanza's parents are like that because Larry David's parents were like that. I mean, that's supposed to be him. Yeah. Okay, yeah, which makes my point even better. That, in other words, I'm saying there was definitely an internal pattern to it, or consistency or coherence that I don't know anybody consciously thought of. Right.
It just popped up because it works. It's funny. Right. Like, clearly, yes, George's parents are going to be ridiculous. Clearly.
That's one of the beautiful things about art. You start channeling something that makes sense in the world, and then it just goes. Like, I think any prolific writer or creator will tell you that. A lot of people say things like they're channeling something, or something just moves through them, and it's probably the logic of the world that they created. And I'm just not surprised at all that a creator might not really understand his own work that much.
It's sort of like, I think at some level I knew to wear the same shirt because it would help ground the viewer. They would realize that there's a continuity here, and there's a callback, and I just didn't want them to be too flustered.
I'm so glad it wasn't me. It could have. I almost picked a shirt just like that one.
Yeah.
All right, Bob. Well, I think we've indulged or stressed the patience of our listeners enough. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I suppose, go read the novel. I hope you had paused the episode and we didn't spoil too much. But even if you're like, I probably should have stopped it, but I just couldn't help myself, still go read it. There's a ton in there that we haven't addressed.
And one more thing you got to do, dear listener and viewer, imagine in your mind that about an hour ago we had paused to tell you how great theswanbrothers.com
Yes.
is, and go to theswanbrothers.com/cross, and I don't know, promote your business or something with cool merch and clothes and swag.
If you wanted to get like shirts that said Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and so forth, they would be the guys to go to.
For example, exactly. So
what's that
sorry.
URL again?
theswanbrothers.com/cross. It's a much greater company than you'd think it was based on the way we horribly mistreated them in this ad placement.
Yep.
All right, thank you, Bob. Great read. I don't know what in the world I'm going to suggest for next time, but you will find out, and we'll catch you later, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, folks, for tuning in. And next time, I may change up my shirt.
No promises.